Hello everyone and welcome back to today's video. This is the first video in our brand new series, Back to Basics, the Foundations of Singing. So today we're going to be talking about alignment, proper posture, good breathing. I'll explain some techniques that are out there and where I tend to differ. And then I'll be showing you good technique versus bad technique. So somewhere over here, there are going to be timestamps. Feel free to jump around and get exactly what you need out of this video. But without further ado, let's dive in. So to start, we're actually going to be breaking everything back down to the basics of posture. Why is it so important to talk about posture? Well, if we have a misalignment started in our bodies, then we are compromised for every other technique that we ask our bodies to do after that. So literally, we are compromised in our breathing and our tension control, which leads to poor technique, so on and so forth. So everything that we do starts with good posture. Let's kind of run through that, what that should look like from the tip of our toes all the way to the top of our head. So to start, we should have our feet shoulder width apart, one foot in front of the other slightly. It doesn't matter what foot that is. I use my dominant foot or my right foot. And what that does is it allows us to have a very solid, strong foundation into the floor so that at all points you feel very well balanced, like you're not rocking back and forth. And then from there, your knees are just kind of softly set over your feet. And what I mean by softly set is that there's a little bit of spring to them. There's a little bit of natural movement so that they're not locked out. And we see when singers lock out their knees is that's when they tend to feel a little bit lightheaded, and we don't want you to pass out. So make sure there's a little bit of movement in your knees. And then your hips are straight and set over your knees and your feet. They're not off to one side or the other. Then your shoulders are naturally set back, not stiffly, but just very gently, so that everything in your chest is open across your chest and your shoulders. So that sets us up for really good breathing. And then your head is in line over your feet and not too far up, not too far down, and very mobile. That way we're not having any tension coming into the neck here. From there, that sounds very easy to start, and it really is very easy. If you walk around every day with good posture, chances are you already have really good alignment for singing. Where it tends to get a little bit tricky is when we layer on the second step, which is breathing, because it becomes a lot for our mind to think about. So before we actually break down breathing techniques, we need to define some terms, namely the diaphragm. What is it? What does it do? Good question. So the diaphragm itself is actually a muscle that runs underneath the rib cage. What happens when you take a breath in is that the diaphragm lowers and creates that vacuum that allows air to be able to come into our lungs. So when I hear the idea of breathing from your diaphragm, I take issue with that for two reasons. One, like we just said, it's a muscle. You can't breathe from it, you breathe with it. And two, a lot of times when I see students come into my studio that have been taught to breathe from their diaphragm, they are thinking, oh, rib breathing, because again, it runs right underneath their rib cage, and they're thinking that they need to expand their ribs, which gives them oftentimes a very high breath that gets caught right in the chest. And you'll notice a telltale sign is your shoulders and your chest raising when you take a breath, which means that there's all this unutilized space underneath the diaphragm that could be filled that's not being filled. And so you're not seeing or feeling the power of the breath like you could be. So again, whenever you take a deep breath in, you'll see and everything is high and tight. So if you actually try that where you're sitting or standing right now, you'll feel that the air kind of gets caught, and you'll feel it get caught right about rib cage level. So in order to combat that, today we are going to try to send the breath underneath the diaphragm. And what I mean by that is if you put one hand right here on your chest and then another hand about belly button level, I want you to take a couple of deep breaths in and see if only the bottom hand will move. Nothing up here should move at all. So if you take a deep breath in with me, see if you can make your stomach go out. Good. Again, in, out. One more time, in, out. Good. So hopefully if you did that correctly, you will actually see or feel the bottom hand raise pretty dramatically, and nothing on the top hand should have moved at all. And that can be a very new and exhausting feeling if it's something that you're not used to. Just because it might feel tiring doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It actually means you're doing it correctly. It's like any other muscle. It has to be practiced and used to strengthen. So again, I do want to emphasize the point that just because your stomach is going out, you're not forcefully pushing it out. You're actually letting it kind of remain a little bit loose so that it naturally expands on your breath. So I do actually have a cool exercise that I use with my students to really engage that mind to muscle connection, especially if you're a beginner learning to breathe correctly for the first time, or if you're just experiencing a lot of tension and maybe cannot quite get it to settle where it needs to be. So this is called our birthday cake and candle exercise. And here's your birthday cake, here's your candle. You're not going to hold your hand too far away from your face because you want to feel the power of the air. So again, I want you to put a hand on your stomach about belly button height and make sure that that's the only thing that moves. And then on the out breath, you're going to breathe out 3 times very quickly and empty your lungs completely. So it's going to look like this. Breath in. Try that with me. Breath in. One more time. And with that, you should feel a very powerful contraction in your low stomach. That is exactly what we need to feel whenever we're singing. That's where we get our power, whether we're singing in our head voice, our chest voice, our mixed voice. And let me actually show you what that sounds like between the 2 techniques. So if we were to do that high breathing, that incorrect breathing, let me show you what the sound is like. If you notice, there's a little bit of air that's kind of surrounding the note. Let me do it again. And I'm not trying to do anything to manipulate the sound. I'm just, in that case with breathing high, I'm not able to get that nice core stability to make the sound resonate fully. So if we're transferring the air low, let's see what that sounds like. Nothing on the upper hand should move at all. Breath in. There's a complete difference in the volume and in the resonance of the sound. So whenever we send the air low, we're able to put the tone on top of the air, where we really don't have that much of a choice whenever we breathe high. When we breathe high, again, we're not able to get that contraction to power that tone first, so the breath escapes. If you're noticing an overly breathy tone, then you might not be breathing low enough. So one last tip that I have for you today, if you're really struggling to reverse your idea of breathing, if you're used to reverse breathing, then do this. At night, whenever you're getting ready for bed, lay down and put a small book on your stomach and really just focus on your stomach rising and falling. So whenever you take a breath in, your stomach should go out and that book should move up. And then whenever you breathe out, it should return back down. And this is a return to our most natural state of breathing. If you were to notice how a baby breathes whenever they're sleeping, they're laying down, you should see only their stomachs rise and fall. Nothing in their chest rises or falls. So this is the kind of breathing that we're after in singing at all times. And it really allows us to use our full lung capacity and to be able to use that core to really power a very strong resonant tone. So I hope you found this information helpful. If you did, drop us a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts. And if you have any recommendations for topics that you would like to see covered in this new series. Next week, stay tuned. We are going to be talking about combating an overly breathy tone and on the opposite end of the spectrum, a very harsh onset in your voice. So we'll be diving into some specific techniques to help you with that. Until next time, I will see you then.